Sanibonani, Dumelang. My name is Isiposetu Agaslago. Power of transformation is when we say yes to God. Is when we allow God to transform us from the inside out. Is when we allow Him to lead us into new territories, to do the things we've never done, to be part of groups and spaces we've never been part of before. Power of transformation is saying yes. It's in surrendering. It's in allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable for a greater cause, for a greater purpose. Because in all things that we do, in God, we live, we move, and we have our being. Let's transform.
Yeah, Hope Alive Radio is the perfect place for you to come through and have conversations that will shape you for a better future. And to help us do that, we bring in contributors from amazing spaces who are doing great things and who are billionaires. Billionaire, how are you?
I repeat. How are you?
We're great. And how are things on your side of the world?
Crazy. Hoping to see you guys soon. Petrol has gone up, so we're trying to preserve.
Now, don't worry. That electric car is coming. Elon Musk is going to sponsor a few vehicles, so maybe you'll get one.
Absolutely. But today, I want to talk about something and time today. You see, your ad-libs today were too long.
Yeah.
Because this is a jam. It's kind of a jam-packed topic. I want to talk about tourism or gentrification.
Oh.
The battle for local resources.
Okay. Yeah, break it
Right.
down to
So
us.
we
It's
know
quite
what
interesting.
tourism. Yeah, we know what tourism is. It's the act of spending time away from home in pursuit of recreation, relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
While making use of commercial and local services. Right, Lucy, you like to travel?
100%. Ooh, so much. I love it. Yeah.
Abroad. And when you travel, how long do you stay? How long is long enough?
Oof. I have tried the 2 weeks. That was the most that I stayed. But normally we grounded to those 3 days, 4 days, weekend away, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a thin line, right, between tourism and gentrification, and where does the gentrification come from?
Yeah.
And what does gentrification actually mean? So let's break down that word. Gentrification is a process where the character of a poor, and I'll put poor in inverted commas, of a poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in and often displacing current locals in the process. Displacement looks like, I can't afford my rent, the food in the area is now too high. Okay, where does this conversation come from? I have a stem for all my conversations, and there's been a lot of discourse over the last few weeks over what's happening in Cape Town. I don't know if you've seen on the TikTok streets, there's been a lot of videos made. In 2021, the DA initiated a nomad program in the Western Cape.
Yeah, I remember
after
that.
Cape Town was, after Cape Town was voted one of the 50 best places for remote work in the world. So there's all these different places that were listed as great places to work. And what is a digital nomad? A digital nomad is a person or an entrepreneur or an employee who works from any location and uses technology to perform their job while nation. So typically they'll stay in an area for a few weeks or a few months, before they move on to the next place, right? So DA then went along to sign some type of marketing agreement with Airbnb to market Cape Town as the digital nomad friendly city. Thereafter, they called on the national government because, now you have an influx of tourists. They called on the national government to put together a new type of visa called the remote working visa. And the aim of this was the idea was to leverage the status that they've got from this list of 50 best places and to attract this new tribe of people who are going to spend money on guest houses, hotels, local taxi cabs, attractions, local businesses and services. So tourism is something that we all, want and push for all our economies, regardless of where you are in the world, because it introduces, more buying power and job creation and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in general, most people were happy about this initiative when it first came out. South Africa's economy needs a boost.
Mm-hmm.
But, and there's always a but, right?
Yeah.
With all these programs and policies, these things need to be well thought out, right?
Mm-hmm.
They need to have citizens' feedback. They need to be analyzed. So what are the pros and cons of having digital nomads?
Mm.
What does it mean for crime? Because South Africa has those types of issues. You're introducing all these people who don't know South Africa, who don't know dangerous places, who don't know how things work. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for crime? What does it mean for law enforcement? How do these people report crimes? Already as South Africans, we struggle with our own law enforcement. And Interpol, national crimes and that type of thing. What does it mean for emergency services and public services?
Yeah.
Distribution of emergency service, ambulance, medical aid, that type of thing. These are all things that need to be in place sort of infrastructurally to not only support our locals, but support this additional influx of people. And most importantly, what is the impact for locals?
What is the positive
right?
impact?
So I'm going to take it back. Yeah, positive or negative.
Yeah.
Most.
Both sides.
And that's why I wanted to add I wanted to add stuff. I think what's often highlighted about tourism is all the positive stuff. But what we've seen happening in Cape Town, encourage anyone listening, even yourself, just type in on TikTok digital nomads, you will see hundreds of videos of Cape Townians and locals complaining about what's happened in their city. And so the TikTok drama started, beginning of this year. And remember, if we signed this deal in 2021, it's taken some time to see the effects. We're now in 2024. It's a good 3 years. People are now starting to see either positive or negative effects of what this digital nomad agreement has done. So since the beginning of the year, there's been a lot of discourse on social media around Cape Town and digital nomad issues. So there's one girl decided to put together a stitch, and I think her name is Tabi Lifestyle and Travel. She put together a stitch of all these videos of Europeans, Americans, anyone in the Western world, basically saying a day in the life of a digital nomad in Cape Town. And they show themselves going through Cape Town, buying all these services, buying all these things. And then the stitch basically says, this is why I can't find a house. Now, if you're familiar with Cape Town, if you've ever spoken to anyone who lives in Cape Town, is that there's a huge housing crisis right now.
Yes.
Because what has happened is that these people who have come in are not staying in guest houses and hotels. They're staying in other people's homes, which are typically Airbnbs. Airbnbs are other people's homes. Yeah. And it means I, Shaz, using my measly rand, can no longer afford to stay in an apartment. Already Cape Town has a seriously expensive rental market. Now, if you're going to introduce people who have dollars, euros, and rands, who can outprice me, I then have affordability issues, and I have what's called, this current Cape housing crisis. Now, I don't know if you know how much typically these homes go for. I've seen something crazy, like a 1-bedroom in Cape Town going for 15K unfurnished, and you're on the top floor. So it's not even like a ground floor. Crazy prices. And there's a girl on TikTok who does this. She reviews Cape Town rental properties, and she did like a 2-bedroom that's old where kitchen cupboards are still those yellow ones. 2-bedroom for 24,000 rand.
Wow. Yeah.
That is insane. That's like a bond. You might as well, buy a house.
Yeah.
But, even the housing market is even more expensive. And so we have this problem in Cape Town. There's a huge problem that sort of, validates gentrification, or this has, arisen over the last few years. So problem number one, locals cannot afford housing or rent in Cape Town, with the 1-bedrooms going for as much as 15K or more. And because the locals are competing housing with dollar, euro, pound, we know that the rand is weak, guys. At minimum, you're looking at 19 rand for a dollar, plus for euros and pounds. So pretty good. We're back. Problem two, locals cannot afford or no longer afford local services. So you know how there's this always a drive to support small businesses, support your local business. And those who are supporting, so say you own a coffee shop, Muzi, I knew that when I go downstairs, there's a little shopping complex. I used to buy my coffee for 10 rand a cup for a medium cup.
Yeah.
Because there are now people that are using dollars and pounds, the local business has seen, you know, man, I can charge them more because they make more.
In comparison
now
to the
20 rand to buy a coffee. So now I go downstairs where I paid 10 rand for a coffee, I'm now paying 20 rand for a coffee. It's now double the price. A simple lunch date or a simple brunch date has now become an expensive outing because these people have upped the prices for the digital nomads who are coming in. So you have even your simple average day excursion to the zoo, it's become unaffordable to the average South African making average rand. And what's worse now, problem number 3, is the same digital nomads from these more developed countries. What they do is, and it irritates me, Muzi, it really irritates me when I see it, they make videos on TikTok about how cheap everything is. And you sit there like, can barely afford to put half a tank in my car. And here's this European telling me, you know, I got for $1. It's a full meal for $1, and you counting me like, yeah, that's like 3 times what it would cost me to do it. And so it almost feels like a slap in the face when someone else from another country with a stronger currency is telling you how cheap everything is. So one, Cape Town is extremely beautiful, and then 2, they're telling people it's so cheap, and then they invite these people, right? And you have an influx of all these people that are coming to one place. And that is what the gentrification part of it. That's the battle of the resources that I'm talking about, is that we have locals who now cannot afford local services. We have locals who now cannot afford to live in those places, right? And then problem 3, which is a huge problem, is the legality, right? Most Western countries qualify for an automatic 90-day tourist visa in South Africa, which has always been a little bit painful for me because we know as South Africans, when we go to other countries, especially European and Western countries, we have such a stringent process to be allowed to get into those countries. And even then, you're lucky to get 10 days, right? So automatically, these people get 90 days, and they further get an option to extend the 90 days upon application. So you could be here for about 180 days on just a basic tourist visa.
Right.
So if you look at the population of that place, for at least 180 days, they're outpriced of these things. And I mean, there's multiple of these people. So it's become a year-round issue, right? Again, another legal issue is that these nomads or tourists end up liking it so much here in South Africa that they don't want to leave. So what's been happening now is that they've been applying for these extensions, and they're either being denied or not responded to. So I don't know if you remember early in this year, the Department of Home Affairs issued a directive to say, la, all of you guys that are still in this country illegally, I need you all to bounce. I don't know if you remember, there's a huge discourse about it, and people were going on and on and on due to the visa backlog. So you've already got 90 days, but if you're applying and you really don't need to be here, I need you to go. And if your extension hasn't been approved, I need you to go. So in late Jan, Home Affairs issued a directive stating that there are far too many people staying here illegally. If your 90 days has passed, or if your 90 days has not been extended, they ordered visitors to leave by the end of Feb, right? If they hadn't had their visas renewed by the 23rd, they would be blacklisted and they would receive an undesirable status. Basically, that means you get blacklisted in the Home Affairs. Next time you ask for a visa, it'll be declined because you don't respect our country's boundaries and the long and short of it. Now, this caused a huge uproar, particularly to politics, but for this topic, it does warrant. Particularly by members of the DA, because I guess it's serving them and their agenda of wanting. And it's important to note that the remote visa or the digital nomad visa is not even in effect yet. So it's been already 3 years, and these have been coming because Airbnb has already marketed Cape Town as a digital nomad city. But my thing is, Mosey, is that we cannot be mad when Home Affairs is doing its job. We cannot be mad when the we've instituted to protect this country from illegal immigrants is doing its job. And it's a double-edged sword, because the attitude for illegal immigrants seems to be very different depending on where you're coming from. You had Operation Dudula, where it was targeting people from African regions and telling them to go home. And funny enough, that was supported across the board. But when you get other people who are from different parts of the world, it's called unfair process. When they are from the West or Spain, we cannot afford to have different attitudes or different palettes depending on where people come from. We cannot say Africans must be Operation Dudula and forcefully removed when we are patting Europeans on the back just because they have money and wanting to get more extensions. It's absolutely appalling, and that fosters discrimination in our society. In any other Western country, South Africans would be lucky to even have a visa at all.
Especially when we talk about the Western countries,
Yes, and these are the problems that we have. And we've seen DA recently, unfortunately, show favoritism to the West. What they're doing now with the elections is something else. I don't even want to get into because it frustrates me. But these are the issues that we have with tourism versus gentrification. Tourism should not be this thing where our people are then suffering, because then it's not doing what tourism was set out to do. Now, you know me, let's get into, some solutions, what can be done, what that looks like. It's taken so long, as with our government, it takes so long to get anything gazetted and put through. Meanwhile, our people are suffering. What can we do to even the playing field, or rather, what can our government do to even the playing field? So one, visa and permit requirements. So establishing a digital nomad policy requires or should have something like tax provisions, right? These people are coming in with their pounds and dollars, and they're not being taxed. And therefore, everything is cheap for them, and no money is really being put back into the system. Tax provisions and duration. A digital nomad visa, you have 3 months, and 3 months, that's it, no more, or whatever the duration that is seen as plausible, to prevent long-term stress on locals. They must pay the tax in the country they're working in, because you're here to work, which means you have an income. Why are you not paying tax? And you are outpricing people of the money, you're doing all these things. So that's step one, visa and permit requirements. 2, build workspaces away from CBD and metro areas. So we see this a lot in Cape Town, is that all these people have influxed into the CBD or the Metropolitan and the Camps Bay and the Cliftons and all these highly congested areas already. These policies create, working hubs in less populated areas. In areas that have less economic activity. People that already, out there, Gabo Paul and further into the regions, right? Steer them away from one place. Now, everyone's congested in Cape Town. It's overpopulated. Everyone's competing for prices, and the demand is high, and therefore you have a supply and demand issue happening there, right? So build workspaces from the CBD and metropolitan areas, working in less populated spaces. attract these nomads away from overcrowded urban areas
Yeah.
to alleviate the pressure on housing, on food, on service delivery. Because if everyone's in the CBD, there's only so many cops that can service that area. There's only so many hospitals that service that area. There's only so many things that can happen or
Within
provide
that
services
space.
for. So let's move them away from those. There's tons of other beautiful spaces throughout South Africa that can handle for nomads that are coming in. So that's two. 3, zoning to protect locals. So the local government or even national government, I'm not quite sure who does zoning in South Africa, but local government must create, land plans. And land is such a contentious issue in South Africa on its own, but they must create land plans that account for the needs of residents and for the needs of nomads. How do we do that? Designate areas for tourism, for short-term rentals, while we protect residential areas. Because what's happening now is that, if we make an example of Joburg, because I'm not too familiar with Cape Town, let's pretend it was happening in Joburg. You had everyone gathering in Sandton, and those who want to live close or in and around Sandton, those who want to live close to the Sandton area cannot do that. That time kids' school is in that area. That time your work is in that area. Or your entire life is there. When you don't protect our residents, we cut them off from our local services, right? So you designate areas for tourism, you designate areas for short-term rentals while you protect. So maybe you come up with the rule that says in the suburbs, they're not allowed to rent to digital nomads. They must stay within a square mile of Sandton, or whatever the case may be. Because what happens now, we come to Randburg where we could afford before. My landlord sees that the other units are making double the money because they're renting. What does he do? When he increases my rent at the end of my lease, he's going to double it, which means he knows I can't afford it. I'm then kicked out from Randburg because I can no longer afford it. But I also then still don't have a place to go. So zoning fixes that issue. Zoning says in Randburg, only for residents. You cannot rent to digital nomads in Randburg. Digital nomads must stay in the Sandton Square Mile. So zoning fixes that issue. Creates a zone where digital nomads cannot operate. They cannot work, they cannot live. So that's 3. Number 4, rent control measures. And I think digital nomad visa or not, I think we could all use rental control measures. And I know there's already a housing body that deals with rental control, but there's nothing that really accommodates when we are competing internationally. So rental control measures would be the government or these housing bodies. They strengthen the Tenant Protection Act or tenant protection to prevent us from being displaced. Shares mustn't be displaced from her roof just because you've doubled the cost.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to compete. She mustn't be homeless as a result of that. Due to the rising property fees, and in these rental measures, they must add anti-discrimination laws. Like I mentioned to you earlier.
Very important. Very important. Yeah.
Very, very important.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned to you earlier, we have a problem in this country where we have a problem here in this country with racism already outside of international affairs.
Yeah.
We have a problem with discrimination as it results to foreigners because one group of foreigners, particularly black foreigners, are not wanted. And then another group of foreigners, white foreigners, are wanted. The attitude or the appetite is more well received than Africans. So those are the anti-discriminations that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
I see it even if you look at these complex groups, and when people make noise complaints and someone say, it's first Nigerians living in units, ban. Those are the type of discriminations we're talking about, is that there's this natural disposition to discriminate against foreigners who are living in our areas. So our rental control measures must anti-discrimination laws. I mean, I have friends in Cape Town who have complained a lot about not being able to find an apartment because they're black. where one of my friends went to do a viewing. And the lady, as soon I think, you know, this thing of Buti, your name and surname sounds white. So my name is Charmaine, right?
Yeah.
When you speak to me over the phone, I could sound white. If I turn on my white accent, you know, you wouldn't know.
That's true.
And
That's true, yeah.
so when I send you a message on WhatsApp, you're like, oh, Charmaine, white name, speaks good English. I set her to do my viewing. She comes and does a viewing. I realize she's black on the day I tell her it's full. When did it get full? There was an experiment conducted where a black guy and a white guy, they were friends. They applied for the same apartment. The black guy went first, signed everything or offered whatever. The white guy went about a week later. The black guy was declined on the basis that, the apartment has been taken. But it wasn't taken down on the website. The white guy, his friend goes in, same thing, he was accepted immediately. The rental agent had the audacity to tell him that the landlord would prefer a Caucasian to live in his unit.
Ouch.
I was
in South Africa.
appalled.
And this is in South
In
Africa.
South Africa.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable.
And the reality is, people say, no, report them to the rental, but the truth is what happens to these people? Absolutely nothing. So these are the anti-discrimination laws we need. Whether these digital nomads come or not, these are things that we still need. I should not be declined for a roof to live just because I'm black. That's crazy.
Absolutely.
Right? And then most importantly, legal help. There's too many tenants or too many locals or average South Africans, and I'm one of them. I don't know jargon of a lot of things. So I sign unknowingly, and then I sign up for things that I don't have. Our local government should be assisting us with, legal help in terms of getting displaced, in terms of tenant control. If my landlord decides today, Charmaine, I'm going to add 10,000 rand to your rent, what are my rights? What are my rights? But if I don't know, I'm going to move out, right? And then last but not least, number 5, digital nomads should hire or use locals. So there are companies that are established by nomads, right, in South Africa. These companies should be encouraged, I would like to use the word mandated, to hire locals. Don't now bring John from Europe and Kate from somewhere else to come and work here with you. No, hire Upra Joe, hire Shares, hire Muzi, right? So that we encourage job creation within our local economy, and it helps solve this issue of unemployment. There are 8 million people in South Africa that are unemployed, which is crazy, right? And then it also helps boost economic development. So when these digital nomads come and they're opening their business here, tell them about no, put at least 50-60% of your staff must be local hires, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and then we have, last but not least, sorry, I lied, regular assessments, right? Once all these things are in place, ideally, government will put in the work. Regular assessments. They must go in and evaluate the economic impact of these digital nodes. We've seen from 2021 until 2020 for what's happening. The locals are complaining. These are their issues. If you go in on a regular basis, you're able then to go and sit with the locals and local industries and check what's happening to our local industries, what's happening to our infrastructure, what's happening to our public services, and then address any negative issues. So they have to kind of do that quite regularly, maybe yearly, maybe they do a census, that type of thing. So these are the measures that our government can put in place. And I must thank my friend on TikTok, super informative, for helping me with these solutions, nomads and islands, right? And speaking of going forward, how can we South Africans, help the agenda? On the 22nd of Feb, South Africa published the draft regulations for public feedback. So every time things change in South Africa, our constitution mandates that South Africans must have a voice. Similar to what we did for e-tolls, even though the country said we don't want it, they went ahead and did it. That's why no one's paying. Because it's like, we told y'all we don't want this, so we're not paying, which now makes it hard for government to recoup as we see, same thing, the new gazette for this remote visa, and it's open for public feedback. So you, I, anybody else who is a South African citizen can submit feedback about how they feel about the digital nomads. They can write a letter, they can write anything they want and submit it to the South African Home Affairs Department. You can deliver it by hand to your department head office, or you can send by email or mail. I always recommend sending email because sending by hand does not make sure. In this,
it might get lost.
These times. So go on the Home Affairs, go on the Home Affairs website, send your email with your concerns through. And really, people don't understand this is how a lot of political parties get their mandates through, because they send their stuff directly and they get it put through. And then you're like, oh, but nobody told us. I'm telling you now. Go and you put word in the policy, and then can decide whether this even happens or this even goes through.
Wow, very interesting one. I took a read at it when it was released, and I was concerned about a lot of things, and I'm glad that you've raised most of those issues that I had concerns about. It's quite interesting. Thank you so much as well for the solutions that you have offered regarding that.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, in conclusion, I personally, I'm a tourist myself. I love to travel.
Yeah.
I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing. Since COVID, the way of working has changed. We have people working from home. We have people working from all sorts of places around the world. And this is a great opportunity for South Africa to jump on that bandwagon, put themselves ahead of the curve, to be exposed to other ways of working and other ways of generating money for this country. The only issue is that when such initiatives are not policed or not controlled, it can very easily have a negative impact on a country that's already taking. That's just my personal opinion. In conclusion, I'm for it for as long as it's done properly and it's done fairly across skin types, cultural types, all sorts of types that you can think of. But I'm pro a luta continua to tourism and digital nomads.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you coming through this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And that is, of course, Charmaine, the conversationalist, talking all things tourism and gentrification, a battle of local resources. I think we're definitely going to win this battle with time, as long as we get the right conversationalists to drive the right conversations to help us improve in that area. Charmaine, how do we follow you and how do we book you for keynote conversations? Because, Bona, you're so amazing at this.
Thank you so much, Mosey. It's at Shares and Conversation TikTok and Dube Communications at Outlook.com for any queries.